At just 18 years old, Emma Coronel Aispuro went from small-town beauty queen to living inside an empire of billions, danger, and unimaginable luxury. Let's take a look at the billionaire life of El Chapo's favorite wife. Roots of a narco princess. Emma's story didn't start with diamonds and designer bags. She was born on July 2, 1989, in Santa Clara, California. But her childhood played out in La Angosta, a tiny ranch village in Durango, Mexico. It was a place that looked quiet on the surface: dusty roads, cattle, small farms. But just beneath that ordinary exterior, cartel life was everywhere. For Emma, it wasn't something she heard about in hushed whispers. It was her family tree. Her father, Inés Coronel Barreras, was known as a cattle rancher, but he was also accused of working with the Sinaloa cartel and eventually ended up behind bars for trafficking. Her uncle, Ignacio Nacho Coronel, was one of the cartel's most powerful bosses, a man credited with pioneering methamphetamine routes before he was killed in a shootout with Mexican forces in 2010. So while Emma's childhood included ranch life and local festivals, it also carried the shadows of one of the most dangerous organizations in the world. But even with that background, people who knew her as a teenager say she stood out for her beauty, her manners, and her determination. She wasn't just another girl from the mountains. She had ambition and knew how to use her charm. And by the time she was 17, that charm would put her on a collision course with El Chapo himself. The beauty queen meets the kingpin. In 2006, Emma entered the Coffee and Guava Festival beauty pageant in Canales, Durango. It was the kind of small-town event where young women competed for local recognition. But for Emma, it became the turning point of her life. Contestants were expected to host parties as part of their campaign, and when Emma threw hers, the guest list had one very unexpected name: Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. He wasn't there by coincidence. By then, Chapo was 50 years old and at the absolute peak of his power, running the world's largest drug empire. He had already heard about Emma's family, and word of a rising beauty queen had reached his ears. Locals still remember that night vividly: music echoing through the plaza, the dance floor full of teenagers, and then the moment El Chapo walked straight up to Emma and asked her to dance. At just 17, Emma found herself face to face with Mexico's most wanted man. From that moment, Chapo was captivated. Rumors still swirl that the contest was rigged in her favor, with his influence securing her crown. Emma denied those claims, but whether or not the pageant was fair hardly mattered. Chapo wanted her. And when El Chapo wanted something, it usually happened. By her 18th birthday in July 2007, she wasn't just the pageant queen anymore. She was Mrs. Guzman, wife of the world's most feared kingpin. And her life would never again resemble anything close to ordinary. Into the cartel dynasty. Marriage to El Chapo meant Emma was instantly elevated from a small-town girl to the young matriarch of one of the most dangerous dynasties in history. Almost overnight, her world transformed into guarded compounds, mountain hideouts, and a life where every move was protected by armed men. By the age of 21, she had already given birth to twin daughters, Imali and Maria Joaquina, cementing her role not just as Chapo's wife, but as the mother of his heirs. From the outside, it looked like a life of pure royalty. Emma had drivers, bodyguards, villas hidden in the mountains, and all the luxury cars she could want. But behind the scenes, her reality wasn't so simple. Chapo was constantly on the run, dodging authorities, hiding in secret ranches, disappearing for months at a time. For Emma, that meant long stretches of isolation, raising her daughters in Culiacan, while her husband played a high-stakes game of survival. Still, despite the age gap, she was barely an adult. While he was in his 50s, Emma quickly became known as his favorite wife. Among his partners, she was the one who stayed the most loyal, never abandoning him and never questioning her role. She wasn't naive either. She knew the world she had stepped into, and she understood the risks that came with the money and power. Yet, through all of it, she remained at his side. That loyalty, more than anything, would define her journey in the years to come, and it would soon be tested in ways she could never have imagined. Loyalty in the shadows. Emma's loyalty wasn't just about standing beside El Chapo at family gatherings or riding in his convoys. It was tested in some of the darkest, most dangerous moments of his life. In 2014, she was right there with him in Mazatlan when authorities stormed in and captured him. For most wives, that would have been the moment to walk away. But not Emma. Instead, she stood firmly by his side, even visiting him in prison and allegedly carrying coded messages to help keep his empire running. Those visits weren't just about affection. According to prosecutors, she smuggled in a GPS-equipped watch, a device that allowed Chapo's men to map his exact cell location. That tiny piece of technology became the centerpiece of one of the boldest prison escapes in history. In 2015, El Chapo vanished from his cell through a mile-long tunnel that had been dug directly underneath his shower. And through it all, Emma's name was tied to the plot. For 6 months, she lived a real-life narco thriller, moving with him as he dodged authorities and reclaimed his position as a fugitive legend. But by 2016, Chapo's luck ran out. He was captured again and eventually extradited to the United States. For Emma, this marked the beginning of a collapse she couldn't stop, yet she still refused to turn her back on him. Through every court appearance, through every headline, she stayed poised, calm, and fiercely loyal. In a world where betrayal was often rewarded with survival, Emma chose devotion, even if it meant sacrificing her own freedom. Diamonds, jets, and hidden billions. By the 2010s, El Chapo's empire was bringing in staggering wealth. U.S. prosecutors later estimated his fortune at more than $12 billion, a number so vast it's almost impossible to comprehend. For Emma, this meant access to a life that went far beyond ordinary luxury. Private jets were always ready, whisking her off to shopping sprees in Europe or vacations in Asia. Armored SUVs and bodyguards followed her everywhere, while her closets overflowed with designer brands, jewelry, and custom dresses. Birthdays for her twin daughters were celebrated with over-the-top Barbie-themed parties, and family getaways happened in multi-million-dollar beach estates. The extravagance was endless. During Chapo's trial in New York, Emma turned heads every day by arriving in perfectly styled designer outfits, walking through crowds of reporters as if she were attending a red carpet premiere. People couldn't look away. She wasn't just the wife of a drug lord, she was performing the role of cartel royalty. And behind the public glamour, witnesses revealed the full scale of the Guzman fortune. Mansions on nearly every Mexican coastline, a private zoo stocked with exotic animals, and even a $10 million seaside palace. But Emma wasn't content with simply being a shadow of her husband's wealth. In 2019, she launched her own clothing line carrying the El Chapo brand, cleverly turning his infamy into fashion. On Instagram, she cultivated the image of a modern narco princess, skydiving, horseback riding, traveling in luxury outfits, every post dripping with extravagance. For a moment, it seemed like she had perfected the balance of loyalty, fame, and opulence. But the empire she lived off was always one step away from collapse, and soon, the spotlight would turn harsh. Prison walls and secrets. On February 22, 2021, Emma landed at Dulles Airport outside Washington, D.C. Dressed modestly, perhaps hoping to go unnoticed, she walked straight into the hands of federal agents. In minutes, the glamorous cartel wife was under arrest. The charges? Helping to run the same empire her husband had built, from drug trafficking to money laundering. Her arrest sent shockwaves across the globe. Some claimed she knew it was coming and surrendered willingly. Others whispered about a secret deal with U.S. authorities, the kind of cooperation that could protect her but destroy her reputation. Her lawyer denied it, yet the rumors only grew. In the cartel world, perception was everything, and whispers of betrayal could be more dangerous than prison itself. Locked away in a small cell for 22 hours a day, Emma traded designer clothes for prison uniforms. In June 2021, she stood in court and pleaded guilty to all charges. Through a translator, she apologized, her voice trembling as she begged the judge not to separate her from her daughters. For the first time, the world saw her not as a diamond-draped socialite, but as a mother, fearful of losing her family. The gamble worked. In November 2021, she was sentenced to just 3 years, far less than expected, and ordered to forfeit only $1.5 million, a fraction of Guzman's billions. The light sentence reignited speculation. Had she really cooperated? No one knew for sure. But one thing was certain: Emma Coronel's life of luxury had come to a crashing halt, replaced by the cold reality of prison bars. Reinvention or legacy? By September 2023, Emma walked free after serving 2.5 years. But freedom came with strings. She was placed on supervised release, her movements monitored, her finances scrutinized. Any sign of hidden cartel money could send her straight back behind bars. At 34, her future was a blank slate, or perhaps a ticking clock. Many wondered whether she would disappear into obscurity, raising her daughters in quiet exile. But Emma seemed unwilling to fade away completely. In 2024, she stepped back into the spotlight at Milan Fashion Week, strutting down the runway as a bride, a symbolic reinvention for a woman once defined entirely by her infamous husband. The reaction was divided. Some saw her as a villain who thrived on blood money. Others saw her as a survivor, a woman who endured prison and clung to loyalty in a world where betrayal was the norm. In her home state of Sinaloa, respect for her remains intact. She is still viewed as the mother of Guzman's heirs, a role that carries both power and protection. And while authorities keep her under tight surveillance, many believe she still holds the secrets to Chapo's hidden billions offshore accounts, properties under false names, and vaults of cash no one has ever touched. Whether she chooses a quiet life or reinvents herself as a public figure, Emma Coronel will forever remain a symbol of the blurred line between glamour and crime, loyalty and betrayal. Her fortune may be uncertain, her reputation forever stained, but one truth lingers: the story of El Chapo's favorite wife is far from over.